Welcome to the Fear and Greed Afternoon Report for Friday, the 11th of November, 2022. I'm Michael Thompson. Every afternoon, we've got the 5 stories that happened today that you need to know about, so let's jump into it. Story number 1 is an absolute cracker. The local market roared higher today. The S&P ASX 200 closed 2.8% higher, smashing through the 7,000 point barrier to close at 7,158 points, its highest close for 5 months. The excitement came after US stocks posted their biggest gains in more than 2 years, following a softer than expected inflation report that left investors betting that the pace of interest rate rises might now slow. America's annual consumer price index rose 7.7% in October from a year earlier, better than expectations of a 7.9% increase, and the first time it's been below 8% since February. That sent the Dow Jones up 3.7%, the S&P 500 up 5.5%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq up a whopping 7.4%. Hope now is that the Federal Reserve will raise rates by half a percentage point in December rather than the 0.75 percentage point lifts that they have been doing. So, how do you play slowing rate rises on the ASX? The answer today was real estate, fund managers, and technology. REA Group rose 9.5% and Domain Holdings lifted 5% on hopes that a better outlook for rates can prop up the ailing real estate market. Magellan Financial leapt nearly 10%. Pinnacle Investment Management jumped 12.5%. Higher stock markets mean fund managers simply have more money to manage. The buy now, pay later sector soared. Zip jumped 18% and Block rose 11%. And tech stocks jumped. WiseTech added 10%. Xero put on 8%. The idea here is that the slowing interest rate rises make the future earnings of fast-growing companies more valuable today. Slowing US rates also mean a weaker US dollar, and that helps the Aussie dollar today climb above 66 cents to 66.24 US cents. On to story number 2 now, and the Australian Federal Police have confirmed that a Russian hacking group is responsible for the Medibank private data hack. AFP Commissioner Reece Kershaw says the Russian hacking group has also been the culprit for other instances of cybercrime. He called it a group of loosely affiliated cyber criminals that operate like a business, and said he'd be holding talks with Russian law enforcement about the criminals. Commissioner Kershaw even says the AFP knows which individuals are responsible, but will not be naming them. Medibank says the data dumps of health records and personal information are likely to continue daily. Today, the hackers released a list of people who have had treatment for mental health and alcohol use conditions. Story number 3, Tennis Australia has signed the largest sports rights deal in Australian tennis history with a $425 million deal that extends the Nine Network's rights to broadcast the Australian Open until 2029. Nine saw record high audiences for this year's Australian Open, mainly because Ash Barty won her final, which was the highest rating final of all time with an audience of 3.8 million people. Story number 4 today, the fallout from the cryptocurrency chaos continues with the Australian arm of FTX being put into administration. FTX is the high-profile crypto exchange that collapsed this week, owing its customers $8 billion. FTX Australia was in the hands of administrators today who'll be checking its books to see if it has enough assets to pay back local customers. Unlike bank deposits, there are no specific laws requiring cryptocurrency exchanges to reserve money to pay back depositors. There are reports in the Australian Financial Review that FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried may have been using more than $6 billion in deposits to fund trading strategies through another one of his companies. And finally, story number 5, Elon Musk told staff today that the very survival of Twitter was at stake because the company does not have the cash it needs to survive. Musk told employees that Twitter is running a negative cash flow of several $1 billion. He even mentioned the word bankruptcy. He said his Tesla stock sales this week were to save Twitter, and added that the social media network remains overstaffed even after he fired half the company's 7,500 employees earlier this week. Reports of the briefing come from the New York Times, which says Twitter did not respond to a request for comment on the story, possibly because Musk fired the communications department last weekend. That's it for the afternoon report for Friday, the 11th of November, 2022. Adam Lang and I will be back tomorrow morning for the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, featuring media commentator Tim Burrows as the guest adjudicator. I'm Michael Thompson. Enjoy your evening.